That's what healing is to me, is coming back into what that we are born whole, that we have everything that we need within us. We're deeply connected to whatever is beyond this physical experience.
Hey gang, welcome to another episode of No More Strangers. In this episode, I'm sitting down with Rio Allen. Rio is someone I would describe as an explorer and an experiencer. I met him in San Pancho, Mexico, where he was working as a breathwork facilitator, and made the trek up to his current mountaintop home in Boulder Creek, California to record this episode. He's doing the work to understand this experience of life on a deeper level, exploring what it means to be himself in a way which can be a guiding light for others on a similar path, directly discussing spirituality and self-acceptance within the homosexual community. It was an absolute honor and privilege for me to be invited up to his home for this episode. If you enjoy this content, have questions about it, or even want to tell me what I could be doing better, please reach out to me directly at the email address in the show notes, in the comments, or even on my social media placements. I want to continue to improve the show, and your feedback is helpful for me personally, so don't be shy. With that out of the way, I really hope that you enjoy the conversation and can take something away from it for yourselves. My name is JT Erickson, and this is No More Strangers. And now we're live.
Okay.
Rio Allen, it's good to be back on the mountaintop with you, man.
I'm glad you're here.
So glad to be here. I was thinking on the way up, the first time it felt like a pilgrimage. Does it count as a pilgrimage the second time? I didn't look up the meanings there.
Yeah, I think you can have a pilgrimage more than once.
Like a couple times in a couple of months. Okay. It's becoming habitual. Well, it's so good to see you. It's so good to be back. And I'm so glad that we're getting to sit down this time and do this. Although last time, just full disclosure, I met you doing breath work in Mexico, San Pancho, Mexico. And I booked another session before I really knew I would be doing this podcast. And lo and behold, one thing led to another. And I climbed a mountain and we did a pretty incredible, for me, breathwork session. And I can only express gratitude, and a lot of humility. So thank you.
My pleasure.
And all of that out of the way, just thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I don't know where to start.
That's fair. There's so much. Well, I knew you primarily from a breathwork and a healing modality in space.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done a lot of things before that, and you've really moved into some other spaces since then. Let's start off with just what you're working on right now, and then we can climb our way to how you got there.
Yeah. It is an evolution, the work that I do. It's pretty consistently evolving. And so my work has led to me working specifically with gay men, doing healing work for and with them. And yeah, and writing is something that I really enjoy. And I keep saying that I'm writing a book, but the book keeps changing.
Yeah.
But yeah, my intent in the work that I am doing right now is to speak about the things on social media, specifically, speak about the things that I didn't hear other gay men speaking about when I was at a particular phase in my journey of healing and becoming, I guess, more conscious or spiritually aware. So I felt like that was really missing, and is why I do the work that I'm doing now.
Yeah. I had a conversation earlier in the week where I was sort of noting that I always expect that these changes or these awakenings or these movements are just things that need to happen organically.
Mm-hmm.
And that underplays the work of the folks who see the need, and it appears to be organic, but they're the ones taking the action to make that growth occur. And that interweaving of organic effect versus intentional effect is something I'm sort of just now starting to explore. And it feels to me that in this case, what would look like, of course, there's a space online for gay men to have explorations of spirituality and self. But when you go out and look, and I listened to your interview with Tor, he had gone out and looked, and it was a horrifying space until he found the work that you were doing. And it's one of those, well, we all just expect these things to exist, but they won't until somebody goes and does it.
Yeah, I spent years looking for Googling, putting in searches for where is someone that's talking about these things. And I would find here and there, but I would have to like really search for it.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, it didn't to me feel like either the ideas and concepts felt outdated or it wasn't inclusive of the bigger picture. So I always felt like I was piecing things together for many years. And I was like, we shouldn't have to piece things together. I know that in my experience that gay men have a natural inclination towards the divine. And I see that because religion rejected us, that most of us reject spirituality because it's like, well, fuck that.
Sure. They've cast you out.
It's been
Why?
abusive. And so, yeah, I'm not even going to lean towards that. But because there's a natural inclination, I've found within myself and within others this conflict and this friction. So my intent, kind of unintentionally, it's like what you're saying. There was a lot of intent and it's unintentional in the intent, but not a plan.
Yeah.
But to open up a space to say, hey, remember that we would have been in tribes. We would have been the people that would help the tribe see beyond. We would be the bridges. And all of us have forgotten that. Most of us have forgotten that. And so on top of whatever traumas we've experienced in our earlier years, there's also this wound of forgetting our place. And so making a place, but how there's also that wound, the wound of forgetting our place, forgetting what our role is, and then trying to create a space for ourselves, but that space is quite limited. It's usually bars and spaces to like celebrate pride, but it's usually just people like trying to numb their pain.
Yeah, and I think I've seen or heard you say, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding, a lot of it is effectively self-destructive or even self-negating, not allowing self-confidence or self-worth to show I've used the word self 12 times, to show itself and be held. Is that essentially where you're moving with that?
Yeah, I mean, I also talk a lot about purpose.
Yeah.
Because I think that obviously it gives direction for our life. It's like it's a North Star for us. And so if we've forgotten who we are, we don't have any sense of direction, then it's kind of like what my self-worth comes from having a direction, having a sense of why I'm here, having a sense of who I am. So yeah, self-worth. Yeah, the destructive part is because you only would destroy something that you're not in relationship with. I'm thinking about like looking out at the land and like how you would only harm the earth if you felt disconnected from it. You would only harm yourself if you felt disconnected from yourself.
Got it. That makes sense. And to the point of purpose, it seems like something that you may not know right away. And I've met folks who claim to know their purpose from childhood, and it is this clear beacon in the future that they are pursuing. And then more frequently, I feel that people discover their purpose slowly through the experience of life.
Yeah.
And that I don't know if you want to make claim to the work that you're doing right now being your purpose, but it is a purpose.
In this moment, it's in this moment, it's my purpose. And I see it as something that is continuously evolving, not just my work, but that purpose continues to reveal itself a step at a time.
Yeah.
So, it was my purpose when I was working in fashion and I was disconnected from my spirituality. That was my purpose in that moment because it was, now I can look back and see like the story, like the chapter of each chapter of my story that I can see, I don't know if do know much about human design?
Only the brief snippets you've mentioned in the past. I don't know much about it.
One of the things that you can learn about yourself in human design is how you are meant to express yourself and move through the world.
Okay.
And in my human design, I am meant, and this is why I believe in human design and trust it, is because once I started learning and I only know some very basics of my own design, but once I started learning of it, I was like, all of that makes so much sense to me. And one of the things was that I'm here to experiment and then learn through those experiments and then help other people after I've done it myself. And so part of my purpose was to feel really disconnected from my spirituality, to take a left path, a path that seemed to have nothing to do with what I'm doing now,
Right.
but really was gaining a lot of information through those experiences, and to have the whole journey to feel disconnected, to try and gain worth or validation through success, money, glamour, all of the stuff. And then to go, wow, this is totally fucking empty. This story is old as time.
Yep.
So yeah, its purpose is unfolding all the time.
So we were talking just before we hit record on this, and it's something that I see, and you referred to it as maybe part of I'm going to butcher this, maybe part of the experience of growing older and growing up. But in the moments of life, we don't necessarily see the path before us. And it's not until we get to a certain point that we can look back and say, oh my God, there's a straight line to where I am now, and it all makes sense. And I was thinking of it in terms of walking through a field and seeing the grass, but the way you described it was sort of carving that path in stone. And I think that's a more apt metaphor. Sort of with that, and we've beaten around the bush a whole bunch here. But let's talk a little bit about your past, about where you grew up, the circumstances, because I think it's, as with so many people, fascinating to see where you began and where you are now, and the way you wove the 2 points together, because it does look in retrospect as though there is a purpose there.
Yeah. There's certainly, I feel like my soul chose all of the very specific circumstances of childhood, especially, to set the tone for what I am doing now and what I will evolve into, whatever's next. Because it's kind of like the perfect storm when you look back at, like,
it really does. Like, spoiler alert, it really does.
Yeah. So an interesting piece of like where my life started and the circumstances that makes a lot of sense in retrospect is that I'm the baby in my family, and I have 3 siblings. They were all born about 2 years apart.
Okay.
And then when the youngest one, the closest to me, was 10 years old, my parents had me. So that family dynamic was already set, and I came in as like this kind of outlier.
I was thinking outlier. Yep.
And that there's so many ways that I can look at that and see how that has affected my life, and also affected my kind of ability. My whole life is I felt like I'm on the outside of things, looking in and looking at systems and groups of people, and like seeing things from the outside, seeing things from a bigger perspective. And that being kind of my role, is to say, okay, here's what I see.
Yeah.
Here's what I see from this perspective. And getting to the point where I felt comfortable with that as my role is a whole other thing, because it's kind of, at least in the way that I was raised, which was Mormon, and it's very much about being humble and not standing out too much, to raise the hand and say, hey, I'm going to tell you world, how I see things, feels a little, felt a little like, who the fuck am I to
Right.
do that?
Right. It's intimidating at a baseline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I'm like making videos on YouTube saying, hey guys, this is how I see things.
Like kind of the opposite of what you might have done as a child.
Yeah. Yeah. So raised Mormon in rural Oregon until 11 years old. Knew that I was gay or whatever. Maybe I didn't have a word for it at that time, but I knew when I was like 8 or 9 years old. But yeah, I don't know if there was ever a time that I was trying to think if there was ever a time that I saw myself like marrying a woman or anything like that. I don't really think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my family was very conservative, with all families, like really beautiful things about our family that I appreciate and that I am so glad that I had. And also a lot of things that were hidden and under the surface of a very like beautiful facade.
Sure. The veneer required of maintaining a lifestyle.
Yeah. And especially for Mormons,
Yeah.
there's a very specific, it's not just a religion, it's a lifestyle.
Very much so.
This is who you are, and this is the very specific roles of how women are supposed to act and how men are supposed to act, and the wife's job, the daughter's job, and all of that was heavily bearing down on our family. Then we moved to Washington State when I was 11, moving from the country, a very small farm that we lived on, which I'm so thankful for that many years of living close to nature.
Yeah.
I would go out into the fields and the wood for hours by myself.
Yeah.
At like 8, 9 years old. And to be able to have that was really important for me.
I always reflect on almost exactly the same thing. My brother and I were raised out in the country, always in the fields, always in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine growing up any other way.
Mm-hmm.
It just, nothing else really resonates with me. And when I thought we would have kids, I kept thinking, I need to get us somewhere with nature, because raising kids in nature seems like the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like giving them that access to the world and the beauty surrounding us, and not having them imprisoned in the cities, which is how I saw it for years.
Yeah. And I was also really thankful because there weren't really any other kids around.
Right on.
So I was by myself a lot, and that was great. My imagination was wild. But also I didn't really know how to socialize that well. So when we moved to the suburbs, there's like paved roads.
Yep.
All of these kids are so cool. They're skateboarders. And so that also had kind of its own effect of like trying to fit in, I realized that like the hierarchy of like cool kids and not cool kids. I don't really know where to go from here.
Yeah. Well, you had moved into the suburbs, and at some point, ostensibly you ended up in Los Angeles. I'm sure I'm skipping steps here.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'll give you the full quick version.
Yeah.
And then
quick run.
And then you can peek behind the curtain wherever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Came out when I was 16.
Oh, wow.
That was a pivotal moment. I was already out to like kids in school. And this was in the early 90s. Something in me just knew that there was nothing wrong with me, even though church was obviously telling me otherwise. And I was like, I just don't believe this.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful, of course, some of that seeped in, but in my most conscious mind, I knew that there wasn't anything wrong with me.
Right.
Yeah. And I was very thankful. Like I was starting to see gay or queer people on TV. There were like the influences weren't that great, but as far as like movies and how gay people were portrayed it was like, you're either going to die of AIDS or you're going to die of AIDS.
Yeah. It was a bleak outlook
at that point. And so 2 years at home, and then I moved out the day after I graduated high school. moved out of my parents' place to Seattle, which was the closest big city. I was like, I need to be in a city. I need to free myself. And by that point, I'd already been sneaking out of the house and going to the city and partying. And I became a full-on raver.
Nice.
I was dedicated raver for a few years, both before I left my parents' house, but then it really, like when I moved to Seattle, it was just like, go for it.
Yeah.
And I look back at that time as a really important time for me. I took a ton of drugs, stayed up all night many, many, many times. And I see that what I was seeking for was to go beyond what I knew. And of course, drugs and dancing will do that for you. And it really helped liberate me from the household that I grew up in. And it was my period of time to like just completely let go and discover who I was, and to see I was meeting so many interesting people in that space. So yeah, just kind of wandered in Seattle for about 4 years, partying, figuring out who I was. Ended up becoming a flight attendant. I moved to Philadelphia for that job. I was a flight attendant for 4 years, which of course that opened up my whole world, traveling. I was an international flight attendant for a while.
That's the gig to get.
I had a boyfriend in London, and I would literally like fly from Philadelphia to London to go have a weekend with him. Yeah. All of these things are just like moments where I was like, I know that this next step is going to open me up to a bigger reality. So like moving to Seattle, becoming a flight attendant, I knew. Then moved to New York City at 27.
Okay.
Didn't know what I was going to do. Ended up finding my way through a series of jobs, finding my way into working in fashion and beauty in New York. And that for me was like a pinnacle moment of the little gay boy fantasy of going to photo shoots and being around celebrities and like the whole thing. It was like, I am doing it.
It's bright lights, it's glamour, it's big.
Dressing up every day for work, taking clients out for fancy lunches, like the whole thing. And then realizing like this doesn't actually fulfill me in any way.
The hollowness you had mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hollowness, and seeing everyone around me as successful as they were, most of them were really miserable.
Yeah.
No matter how much money or success they had. And so that was a turning point when I was in New York, and I went, wait, this is not it. I feel so disconnected from myself and my center. And it was the thing of wanting to come back full circle, because I was in, one of the biggest cities in the world, and I felt this real need to get closer to nature and to feel more grounded. And I was actually like in the agency that I was working in at my computer, filling out applications to work on a coffee bean farm in Hawaii. I was like, I need something that's like the complete opposite of this.
Which is almost closer, shockingly closer to the way you grew up.
Yeah.
In rural Oregon.
Yeah. So I didn't end up making it, back to nature necessarily, but I did move to a city, San Francisco, that at that time felt more grounded than New York City, and kind of was a step towards knowing that I was going to find my way back to like a more authentic part of myself.
Yeah.
And so I did when I became a personal trainer. And that's when the work that I'm doing now kind of took form and shape.
Got it.
Learning that I was good at, and I really enjoyed supporting people and guiding people. And yeah, that was kind of the moment where I felt like, okay, my life is now really taking off with some intention.
Yeah. And you might not have been able to get there had you not had the experiences that you've been describing. Like seeing that, I mean, everybody's going to have questions about, do do I want to go live this very specific idiosyncratic dream of fashion in New York and that high power lifestyle? It seems high power, I'm sure. Haven't lived it. But very glamorous.
Mhm.
And to your point, very hollow. And look, spirituality doesn't pay so well unless you go full guru,
Right.
right? So you have to have already rejected, I think, some of those goals to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look at that a lot. I know a lot of folks very motivated by money and security, and I understand. Like security is tempting, right? But as we're living each moment, you have to find that balance. How do you manage that balance? Because where we are right now is gorgeous. And I still don't know how you did it, even though you've told me.
Dude, the small the moments that like connect to each other, the synchronicities that have led me to anywhere that I've lived that's been cool.
Yeah, which seems like a lot of places, by the
It
way.
has been, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, when people ask me pretty much anywhere, like when I was living in Mexico, people were
Gorgeous
like, "How
place.
did you end up in Mexico?"
Yeah.
Divine unfoldings. How
Yeah.
did I end up here? Divine unfoldings. Why am I here? I don't know. Every time I've been, like when I was in Mexico, why am I here? I mean, I knew on a soul level,
Mm.
well, I'm here to do my own deeper work, to be separate from the life and culture that I knew. But it wasn't, yes, it was a series of small choices, but it wasn't like one big choice of I'm going to move to Mexico and I'm going to
Yeah.
deepen my healing. It was just one step after the next. But as far as security goes, I think I'm not the best person to ask because it's part of my nature to for better and for worse, it is part of my nature to really lean into I'm completely taken care of all of the time, no matter what. Mostly because I had to do that.
Mhm.
Like I really got scrappy when I was 18 years old and making it work in Seattle and living in 4 years. I moved 7 times and I lived like one of my favorite places that I loved that my mom cried when she said that I was living there was in a laundry room in the basement of my friend's house. And I made it kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I was totally fine living there. And my mom came and was like crying. I
My
believe
son
you're
has been
living here.
reduced to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He should be living in something nicer than this. And anyway, that's like, I've been scrappy. Like I've lived really well on very little often,
Yeah.
but I've also it hasn't really made that much difference how much money I've had. I've also
Yeah.
had the experience of having more money. And really, it's just mind
Yeah.
around all of it because security isn't real.
That's damn true. That's true.
Everything can change in an instant.
We should be more like your dog,
He-
who is now just asleep.
Completely passed out.
It's about time, buddy. Yeah. So you moved into breath work, which is how we ended up meeting.
Yeah.
And I say this frequently when people ask about, my time in Mexico or other places that I've been. And I consistently go back to describing the breathwork experiences, which you were enabling. I don't know how to say it. Facilitating. That's the word. Yeah. The breathwork sessions you were facilitating were among the most powerful that I've experienced. And you know what else I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the stuff that hit the hardest, which is, again, part of the reason I came up the mountain last time. How could you go into and describe breath work and what it means to you, frankly, would be, I think, the most important part.
Yeah. There's different angles to describe it, depending on who I'm talking to and
Sure.
where they're coming from. But generally, the way that I see it is that it's using our breath is the way that we can connect to our essence or our soul and our bodies.
Yeah.
And how most of the time, or not just our bodies, but our all layers of our bodies, our emotional body, our mental body, all the layers of who and what we are can come together and be experienced as whole and unified when we're doing something like breath work. And it alters your consciousness. And to be in that unified state, brings a lot of clarity because you're not in conflict with, you're not sitting in your mind being in conflict with your heart or disconnected from your body. That when you're in that unified state, realizations come, emotional things that have been repressed can arise and don't have to be understood by your mind, even though they might be in the process. That we can override the mind's need to understand and process everything through the mind, which is so limited because it's all based on the past and doesn't
Totally.
and our minds don't have the bigger picture. So yeah, it's a form of deep healing that I also find really empowering because you're not consuming anything. No one's doing Reiki on you or energy work or something like that. It's just you and you. So when I found it, it was around the time that I'd opened up my own studio in San Francisco, and I was leading meditations and my fitness classes, and it was the perfect right next step, the perfect right next modality for me because it bridged the physical. It's using your body, using your breath, to connect to the non-physical.
Yeah.
And it came into my life because I had heard some trainers in the gym that I was working at talking about their experiences with it. And when I first experienced it, and this was after a couple of years of therapy, the stuff that came to me, the realizations, the amount of pain that I was holding in my body about things that I thought that I was all good with because I had had therapy and I could tell the whole story, but what was living in my body that was affected by those experiences had never been felt because it was I would have never been able to name it because it was so deeply repressed.
Yeah.
But that's the power of the breath, is that it kind of pushes beyond what we're comfortable with in our normal consciousness to drop us into deeper realizations and open up our hearts and our body to let those things actually be felt and processed.
Yeah, there's this underlying theme here that I keep coming across as well. And parts of what you're describing sound like it's when you're describing sort of the intellectualization of our experience, that's what folks generally refer to as like a very left-brained mindset or experience, and using the breath work to sort of shut down that intellectualizing or that translation for speech, and opening up the pathways to allow for the right brain to come online and be balanced or even take over for a time. It's really pertinent to me. When you talk about the therapeutic side, it also sounds like the same exact thing, right? Like, the story and you can communicate the story, but your body still hasn't processed out whatever those traumas are or whatever those experiences are, and you're still holding it. You can know that you're supposed to be over this.
And even tell yourself that or believe that you're over it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of folks expect that, oh, well, I figured that out. That's solved. Nah, you still got some time. Your body, as they say, keeps the score, and it's protecting you from actually understanding or realizing.
And there's so many layers. Like I told you before we started recording that I had a healing session yesterday with a friend who guided me through some parts work. And what came up in that was the same. It's the same core wounds all of the time.
Dude, it always is
the same.
Yeah.
But there was another layer of self-compassion that I was able to have to see things, the same things again from a new perspective, because I'm different right now than I was a year or two ago. And I was able to see things with a lot more compassion and even let myself feel another deeper layer of pain or shame or whatever needed to be felt. That there's just degrees of that are available to us at different times. And It's the matter of like moving out of being disassociated, essentially.
Yeah, you can't disassociate when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah. And breath work, if done with the intention of being embodied, will help you experience the pain that's in the body, not run away from it. And that's why I found it especially at that time, because I didn't really know. This was before I'd heard anything about somatics. Trauma was not something that is spoken about like it is now. Yeah, the whole context around emotional healing and the body keeps the score and all of that was very niche and not popularized
No,
at that time.
largely
So
looked down upon, in fact.
y-
Like what is this? Why are you so weak? Why would you even be dealing with this? Just suck it up, man.
yeah,
Not to go full masculine mindset there, but that's sort of what we were taught. And it worked for people, but I don't know that it did.
I found that the clients who got the most out of breath work were often men because it's kind of a masculine, it's very activating.
Oh yeah.
It's very powerful. You even can feel powerful while you're doing it because it's, you're having to use effort. There's a lot of energy that's moving, and it's a doing instead of like just trying to sit in a meditation and then let things arise, which can be so challenging.
Yeah.
So men would come into it and like have this very intense physical, because it's so visceral and physical and sometimes physically painful.
Yeah.
That is almost like, yeah, I can fucking do this.
That's right.
And then kind of break open often, halfway through the session, like the heart opening and just going, oh my God, I'm allowed to feel.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, when you do it, you let us hold rocks, which is dope. Like, I felt like a kid. I was like, all right, I'm playing with rocks. Oh my God,
Yeah.
what's happening? I'm coming out of it, they're boiling hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's the way I like to, something that I appreciate about breathwork is also that it's ritualistic. It's ceremonial in a way. It feels like an initiation, that like you come in as one version of yourself and you come out on the other side having experienced something profound that is very personal.
Mhm.
And most of us don't have those kind of experiences like we were talking about earlier. Sometimes
right.
one day can just lead into the next day and it can feel like nothing's changing.
Yeah.
But I find that having ceremony or having ritual in our life can help make meaning, and to delineate, this is before, this is who I was, what I was aware of, what I was holding on to, what type of pain I was unconsciously in, and now I have experienced this thing and I am in this state. And I think meaning making and storytelling for ourselves is really, really important. So that's also, part of the medicine for me in the people that helping the people that I work with, is to emphasize what you just did is important and it's changed something about your life and your experience. Don't overlook this as just another cool thing that you did and then you move back into whatever patterns you had before. Really take this and what can you continue to learn from that experience, and or can you claim for yourself that you've changed because of that experience?
Yeah. And what you're describing sounds like what should be known as the definition of integration, right? And a lot of people just throw the word around like, oh, you've just been through a hard ceremony or a difficult session or a process. My first time doing anything like that, I went to work the next day.
Oh my God.
Didn't help for shit. I mean, it was a great week of work. I say this a lot, but afterwards I hadn't made real progress, and it took a year or two to start to actually come back to it. And like we were talking about earlier today, before we hit record, we always have these checklists of things we have to do. And the way you were describing when I asked, hey, have you been able to integrate yesterday's session at all? You're like, well, I haven't really had time to sit down and do that yet. Like, what is your process for integration? I know you started to give me a high level, but I think it's interesting to share.
Creating space for myself, to not try too hard to like there's this fine balance between understanding, like taking key moments from, like, I'll just use yesterday as an example. There are key things that came out of that experience, things that I could see from a different perspective and things that helped me make sense of patterns in my life. So noting those things, but then not trying to force using my mind, like to force a new storyline about myself or to get hooked on having to do the next step in the process, but giving some space for awarenesses to just naturally, awarenesses of like these puzzle pieces that I'm seeing how they all fit together. And I know that there's more puzzle pieces that will come in, but I can't force that. So creating space for whatever the continued awareness is, because to me, the way I see it is like every healing experience that I have or new layer of awareness and consciousness about myself and my life, it's another stepping stone. It's another piece of the puzzle. And it's like I can start to see myself more clearly as these pieces come in. And so what I got from yesterday helped paint the picture even more clearly. And instead of trying to find the next puzzle pieces, it's like, let that come in for me. But that requires space, rest, not consuming a whole bunch of other information.
Okay.
Which for me can be quite difficult. I've spent many years consuming information that has been really helpful for me, but sometimes it's like I can't even integrate that information.
Yeah, we all have something of a dopamine addiction these days.
Mm-hmm.
It's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a problem.
For sure, it's a problem.
Yeah, I'm trying to be gentle about it. So you've moved from that, and this all starts to piece together that overall trajectory that was describing where we started off today's conversation, right? And you've developed all these skills and all these perspectives, and you've moved into a space where you're ostensibly helping people who are at a point where you had been looking for support, and there was none.
Mm-hmm.
There's none available for you. What does that support look like? What does the work that you're doing now look like? And I ask this as somebody who's been through sessions with you and has sort of watched where you've been and what you've been doing for the last, oh my God, have I known you for 3 years?
Has it been that long?
No way, 2 years. Let's call it 2. Damn.
But possibly close to 3.
We're getting close, yeah.
It's the easiest umbrella to put it under is healing work, and that my intent behind anything and everything that I do in my work, whether it's videos on YouTube or working with someone one-on-one and taking them through a deep practice, whatever, if that's breath work. I also lead cannabis journeys. And I've also found that I can personally take myself and others through really deep, meaningful experiences through creative visualization.
Okay.
So it kind of doesn't really matter what the modality is, but the intent is that I'm supporting people in trusting themselves and trusting their lives and knowing that they know what's right for them. And because we all have had, but from my personal life experience, to grow up in an environment which was like the opposite, which was, this is how you're supposed to do things. Just trust the church, trust the leaders, trust mom and dad, trust the government, like just follow. Why do you have to do something so different? Why do you have to be so different? Just
Don't go trusting yourself, Rio.
Yeah.
What do you think?
What does that mean?
Yeah.
I'd never heard.
And that's a great question, by the way. Like, I'm still learning. What does it mean to trust myself? Like, I don't have an answer for that, but it's wild to wake up to. Wild.
What else is there?
Yeah. Well, right. And it always seems to me, and this is just personal reflection, we've always sort of known where we're supposed to go and what we're supposed to do. And we end up just fighting ourselves so much because of what we're told is supposed to be the path, right? And it's it seems to be this constant struggle, this constant battle to recognize what you actually need to be doing as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully you get there before you die. Not that that really stops anything, but
Just come back and do it again.
just come back and do it again. And it's so funny listening to some of your conversations online or interviews. I feel like we're pretty similarly aligned on how we see, coming into this world and the things that we need to do and what reality is from this insanity of a human perspective, where we're given nothing to start with. Like, we're born into this empty vessel that has some programming to it, but we don't know the rules.
I feel like it could also be said that it's the opposite. We're come into this world full of everything
Ooh.
that we need.
That also tracks. I don't think these negate each other.
Yeah. And we're just trained out of not believing that or trusting that. We're basically like schooled into indoctrinated into this is how you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
This is how you're supposed to do things. And yeah, I mean, that's what healing is to me, is coming back into what that we are born whole, that we have everything that we need within us. We're deeply connected to whatever is beyond this physical experience. And that if there weren't any interruptions, that we would just naturally, easily find our way. But as part of the human experience, to be completely interrupted and to be told that we can't trust ourselves so that we can have the experience of all of these limitations, all of the traumas, all of the stuff. To me, it's like what our souls wanted. It's not a bad thing that we experience trauma. It's not a bad thing that there's pain in the world. That's what this is all about.
Seems to be.
Is limitations, constraints, and then how do you make your way within all of that?
Yeah, the efforts to struggle, the learnings of how to efficiently navigate the obstacles, and forging a path that is true to yourself through the obstacles that we're just describing, through all the difficulties, through all the, you always hear life is suffering, and maybe it is, but it's not suffering without purpose, I don't believe. It's all to help us learn what we're here to learn. I wish I knew what we were here to learn, but I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah, I think I resonate with how Kabbalah looks at this, which is that we reincarnate and that we come in with what they call soul's baggage. And so from lifetime to lifetime that we're kind of moving through lessons to learn, almost like karma. And that we chose our circumstances in advance so that we could like be in the perfect setting for these learnings. And that, each person has a different lesson to learn. And that's interesting because last week I was in a moment of being really frustrated because I came down off of my mountaintop and went down into Santa Cruz, into day-to-day life with people walking on the street and on the sidewalks, which I'm not around very often. Yeah. And I looked around and I was like, oh my God, there's so much suffering happening, so much pain. It was overwhelming to me. And I came back home and I was just so frustrated because I was like, it doesn't have to be like that. And that I was seeing and projecting a lack of awareness, and that we have an ability to expand our consciousness. And there's so many people who are not interested in that and are therefore suffering even more because they don't have any context for why we're here. If for me, having some context that makes sense to me is what keeps me alive.
Yeah.
If I didn't have that, I would probably have chosen to check out a few times.
Yeah.
And so I came back from that and I was feeling so frustrated, and I posted a video on YouTube about it. Not because I felt like the video was like going to be that important for other people, but because I have devoted to a video a day for 30 days.
Yeah.
And it was a day where I was like, I do not have anything inspirational to say here. And so I'm just going to say, this is what I'm feeling today. This is It's how it feels. And then there was a beautiful reminder from a couple of people in the comments that not everyone is here to spiritually grow in the way that I see is possible. Not everyone's here to heal.
Yeah.
A lot of people are here to have a lifetime of confusion and pain because that's what their soul needed.
Yeah.
And it may very well be that they never, in quotes, wake up to a larger reality that could take them out of some of that pain.
I was thinking about almost exactly that on the drive up here yesterday, and I didn't put it into quite that frame. And I think the way you said it is really useful and understandable and relatable. One of the only ways that we can look at other people is through the lens of our own experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's something we dislike about somebody, it's something we probably dislike in ourselves, and we see it in ourselves and hate it, and we project that onto them, assuming their experiences. Always. And every time I realize it, I'm like, wow, I am an asshole. It doesn't matter what other people see, doesn't mean anything. It's just once you recognize it, you're like, okay, maybe I need to give them some grace.
Mm-hmm.
And coming into Santa Cruz last night and being out in it this morning, it's a very interesting, I've been spending a lot of time in LA, and there's a lot of suffering in Los Angeles, but it doesn't have the same juxtaposition with the absurdly beautiful nature surrounding Santa Cruz, which almost makes it more stark in comparison.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to describe it, and I'm curious what suffering you were identifying in Santa Cruz, because I saw a few different forms of it, but I'd love to hear what stood out to you.
I kind of, no matter what the personal suffering might have been for the people I was seeing, the umbrella that I saw as suffering was like a zombie and that could go for the addict on the street, but could just as easily be the person ringing me up in the vegan restaurant and everyone else in between. It was just this sense of like, are you guys here? Are we connected? Like, right. What, just this general feeling of people running on autopilot. And understandably, because there are so many people that are just trying to like literally stay alive.
Survival is key.
Yeah.
And it's getting harder, it seems. Or maybe the bar is being raised for what constitutes survival.
My perception of what's happening in the world right now on the like very like the world that we see on the news, which is not the world to me, but that's its own projection. But it is a reality that most people had said, this is our consensus reality, which is not accurate. But that world is becoming more and more intolerable and divisive and unmanageable in the way that it had been lived. Like that our parents could say they lived in a very predictable world. If you do this, it equals this. We do not live in that world anymore. We don't live in a world where institutions that our parents trusted, that we trust, and that intensity of pushing and pushing, making it harder to ignore, making it harder to be on autopilot, is by design. For me, it's like that we are all part of a collective consciousness that we are a part of, whether we are in human form or not. And that consciousness is constantly evolving. And at this point in that evolution of consciousness, it is what, very in the spiritual world, people are talking about ascension and talking about an awakening. It is happening.
And we hear it all the time, at least in the circles that you and I travel in. We hear about awakening across the board.
If you think about, like, I'll just use, just in a very short period of time, just breath work. In 2016, when it came into my life, it certainly wasn't new anywhere. Like,
no,
first of all, it's
chronic
ancient
practices
techniques.
Existed for thousands of years.
And those things came in with yoga, and certainly there was a renaissance of breath work in the 70s into the 80s. And there's certainly been people who have been using those practices since then. But as far as it being something that was like maybe as popular as yoga, it is a form of yoga, but that it was very fringe and not that many people. If you said breath work, there you wouldn't see recognition in anyone's eyes.
No.
And when I was in San Francisco, I only knew one other breathwork facilitator at that time. And so it was very novel then.
Yeah.
Now, like just go on YouTube and there's like all of these breathwork meditations and there's thousands and thousands of breathwork facilitators and it's very common. So that's a very short span of time.
It is.
For something like that to become popular. In order for something like that to become popular, things like healing need to become a common framework. Everyone finding their own unique way into understanding their relationship with spirituality got to also be a part of that. And so seeing just in 10 years how much, 9 years, seeing how much evolution of consciousness there is, that when I was leading groups and I was talking about when you're breathing, you're connecting to your essence, you're connecting to your soul. And some people would be like, oh, what?
Yeah, okay,
what
guy.
are you talking about?
You hippie.
Yeah.
Like,
and now I could say that even to someone who's not really that connected to it, but because it's so much a part of, it is that the yin yang of what's happening right now. There is an elevation of consciousness. You talk like just using phrases like manifestation. That's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And when something like manifestation hits everywhere, I start to wonder how well understood it is, or is it just a new buzzword?
It's an entry point for people to start thinking beyond the construct that our parents taught us, right? Which
That's
is
fair.
Like Newtonian.
Yeah.
If this happens, then that happens. But what about like all of the unseen?
Right.
So I think the concept of manifestation is inviting to people because it is like, oh, there's more happening and I have some control over my reality. And it's mostly coming from, I want something. And so I'm going to shift my reality to get it.
Yeah.
And then you get deeper in and you're like, oh, this is not just about getting things.
Right. As you were describing that, I was considering maybe this is something that's sort of an offshoot of, how do I say this? An offshoot of the lack of scarcity that we currently live in the West, and then recognizing that a lot of these concepts come from the East or from India or some of these other areas where abject poverty is a core part of experience. And if manifestation was just about getting the things, then maybe that wouldn't be the case. But to the point you just made, it's not always about getting things. And right now, anywhere I look, it's The Secret is what people are thinking about, or how do I get more money? Some places I go, folks are working heavily toward manifestation and they choose to go explore it in Vegas. And good for them, they want to go do this, but it also seems antithetical to me once you start to move into that deeper idea of what this can actually be used to do. And that's where I look at things like, what do people actually understand? So yes, to your point, I agree. It's a good gateway placement, so to speak, to open people up to these ideas or these mindsets. But good grief, if that's just where it stops, what do now? Or is that sufficient? And then we roll back for a time and then rediscover it and roll back and rediscover, right?
Yeah, I think that it's back to the point of not everyone is here to spiritually evolve. And they will, we are
I'm
all
betraying my biases.
Evolving.
Yeah.
We are all spiritually evolving, but it doesn't look that way. I think about my brother who is an addict, and from the outside, from like 15 years old to he's almost 60.
Oh, wow.
Most of his life has just been addict survival. And he will most likely die that way.
Yeah.
And so I look at his life and I know that he had his own soul contracts that do not include waking up to a higher level of consciousness.
Right.
And that's his path to walk.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always interesting. And you're reminding me, I come back to this frequently, and I've probably said exactly these words in exactly this cadence and exactly this order in the past, even on the podcast, but recognizing or learning to recognize that everybody is actually doing the best that they can really does seem aligned with what you just said. And that's something that I've been meditating on a lot. And it's helping me with my capacity for gratitude. It's helping me with my ability to forgive. It's helping me to understand other people a lot more deeply. And large chunks of that, and not to be all navel-gazy here, but also learning how to forgive yourself comes from that. And I found the path to that via learning how to forgive other people or accept other people, and then having people stare me right in the eyes. Maybe you were one of them, saying, okay, but can you learn to love yourself or forgive yourself?
I probably
you 100%
did say that.
You 100% did, more than one. I'm a little slow on the uptake, Rio. It takes me some iterations. We'll get there. But it's an interesting evolution of learning. And I don't know if there's a necessary linear progression here, but learning to forgive yourself through forgiving other people. And how different is it once you start to see that we're all the same? I get hit by revelation after revelation, just laying there at night, staring at the ceiling. And starting to actually feel that oneness, that complete, we are literally all the same exact person. I had this really interesting vision of it. I'm going to sound like a psychopath. But it was every human as a hair on a giant head popping or pushing their way through the scalp and looking around and saying, oh, ha, 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 we're all different. Look at you. You're short. You're darker than me. You're lighter than me. You're way too tall. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And then not realizing that we all came from the same scalp and we're all part of that greater individual.
Yeah.
It was a little gross and a little bit on the nose. But it was this sort, I don't even know where it came from. I never know where these things come from, but it was this awesome moment where I was just like, wow, we are jackasses.
I love that you have these awarenesses and then the filter over top is...
Oh, I'm always condescending to self.
Is not like, wow, look how beautiful we are. The takeaway is like, God, we're all so dumb.
Yeah, I'm working on it. We'll get there. Yeah. Well, and maybe it's not that we're all so dumb, but it betrays, maybe it's my own ignorance or maybe I'm casting my own shadow over this. But it also shows opportunity for everybody to start recognizing or seeing themselves and everybody around them and opening up the capacity for forgiveness and acceptance and love. Because as I like to say, or at least I've told, well, everybody probably has heard me say this, but really the only thing that seems to matter at the end of the day is love. It's the only thing that seems to matter.
Well, where we are right now, this location, I think it was 4 years ago, there was a massive fire.
There's still remnants of it.
Yeah. So that house that's up there was only the guest house to a house that was right there.
That's a huge guest house, by the way.
I know.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So that house completely gone.
Yeah.
And I think about how quickly and easily all of these things that we look at as like, you can see the light. Can you see the lamppost up there that has melted?
Oh. Yep.
The like light bulb holders are melted.
Yep.
You know, and like all of these things that we perceive as physical reality, none of it really is ours. All of this is why I was saying like security isn't actually real.
Yeah. It's an illusion, man.
It is an illusion. And so coming back to the hippie ideal of everything is love, it actually is.
It seems to be. And the first time I realized it, I think I yelled at the guy that was sitting for me. I didn't yell at him. I was being a little bit of a condescending jokester about how I was so annoyed that the Beatles were right. Because I had a history of not liking the Beatles at that point. And it's the whole idea of all you need is love. It's like, damn it, the hippies were right.
It's true.
Why does that bother me?
Yeah, why does that bother you?
A whole lot to unpack there. Like,
yeah. I mean, there are key universal truths that it all revolves around and comes back to.
Yeah.
As I've made videos that are meant for gay men, there have been people who've left comments that said, this is not just for gay men. And I'm like, yeah, I know, of course.
Yeah.
And there are very specific things that groups of people have as experiences that shape us as individuals, as a collective,
Right.
that these common experiences for us are really important to name,
Yeah.
especially when it's outside of dominant culture.
That's a good way to put it. I wish I'd had that phrase a week ago. Kamala's going to laugh at me. But to the point of dominant culture and these cultural touchstones for these groups that are outside of the dominant culture, that's how you can create that resonance. It's where you can get that touch point that's going to grab them and say, oh, finally, something I recognize.
Right.
It's something about me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super important.
That's why I started making these videos specifically, because for 6 years, I was doing healing and coaching work for the general population.
I was part of that.
You were part of that. And then it felt like in order for me to be able to verbalize, distill the things that I want to share, it has to be through a specific lens.
Yes.
And I think that that's a big part of why we forget that we are a part of unity consciousness, forget that we're the hair on the head, so that we can have the experience of like seeing things through a specific lens and having all of these very unique experiences that no other being will ever have in time. For me, it's like that's how consciousness elevates itself, is to continue to have all of these very unique, specific experiences, to have all of the hairs on the head think that they're separate.
Yeah.
To have a full head of hair.
Yeah, as mine starts to recede. Oh, yeah. And I used to have this, maybe a conceit of sorts, that differentiating based on audience was somehow a form of exclusion. And I was ignoring part of the core concept of storytelling, where you have to know your audience and the message has to be crafted to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily exclusionary, rather a more specific or explicit form of inclusionary messaging. And just because it's not messaged for, say, me, doesn't mean it's trying to exclude me.
Yeah.
I'm just maybe not the target of this specific telling.
Well, that's what I got. The roots of me doing the specificity of the work that I'm doing and the messaging that I'm doing now came from not only not finding people talking about what I'm talking about, but finding people talking about things like sexual healing or divine union or things like that only through the lens of male-female dynamics. And hearing therapists and dating coaches and all of the things that I was interested in hearing, the topics that people had to talk about, but they were only talking about it through the lens of heteronormativity. And I felt excluded.
Right.
And I remember getting very, like, I would find myself getting really pissed. Why the fuck can't you just use language that includes other people? And to your point, that language needed to happen for those people to see themselves. And it invited me to step up and say, okay, well, no one else is doing this, so I guess I'll be the one that starts talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's weird to think of myself as being part of the dominant culture, because I've always felt excluded from that in several very specific ways.
Mm-hmm.
And also through a different lens. Come on, bro. Like, yeah, woe is me. Yeah, it's interesting. This is a fairly new thought pattern for me. So I'm sort of exploring it in real time. So bear with me if I don't fully grok it, but also I think conversations like this help not just me, but we were sort of discussing the lens through which I'm producing this show, is fairly specific, even if I don't recognize it as such. Wow, what a cool exploration. How did you come to the idea or the recognition of souls propagating over time through different incarnations and the baggage? You had mentioned Kabbalah. Was that your first introduction to it?
No. Most of my, I don't know if I would say beliefs, but I'll just use that right now as a a placeholder.
Yeah.
Most of my beliefs about who and what we are outside of
Meat space.
yeah. Most of it came from experience, personal experiences on my own journey, piecing things together. Like I was saying about like my human design type is about experience and only being able to really learn through experience. So I've done quite a bit of rejecting of what would you call rejecting of fully formed concepts of reality like Kabbalah or religion. And so I end up finding pieces of truth in my own experience and then hearing someone else talk about it. And then I go, oh, that's right. That's something I already know.
Yeah.
So it just kind of feels like truth to my own experience. And then I can say, oh, okay, Kabbalah says it like this,
Yeah.
rather than this has been my experience, but the experience tended to be what happens first. And then I hear someone else describe it and I'm like, that totally resonates
Got it.
with me. So a lot of those experiences coming through my own healing,
Yeah.
just trying to understand myself, trying to make sense of reality.
But not necessarily abdicating your own experience and handing it over to somebody else's sort of collective perception of reality. But to your point on your human design being specific to experimentation and exploration,
Mm-hmm.
when you find concepts that are reflected in, say, Kabbalah, parts of Buddhism, parts of Hinduism, you aren't necessarily just adopting them whole cloth and re-identifying your experience with that. It's
Right.
It's saying, I get this. Some of this I don't know about.
Exactly. Yeah. There are things, there are pieces of truth in everything. And that is to me the way that my spirituality has become defined, is taking what resonates with me from different sources and making it make sense to me.
I've been hearing, I listen to way too many podcasts. We'll pretend it's for research purposes. And there seems to be this nascent pushback on the structures that we've been referring to as spirituality, which I really think is that exploration of reality through the lens of yourself and your experience and your spirit and other sometimes extra physical experiences that we can have. There's been a pushback on that in regard to the way that it can fragment society, and people starting to try to recoalesce around, in the United States, say the Abrahamic religions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Judaism, Christianity, Islam are the three sort of pillars of what we recognize in the West, noting there are way older, way cooler, way different experiences of religion. And maybe this isn't a fair question, and it's one that I don't have an answer to, but is there I don't like this one. Is there a danger to society if something like this spiritual construct begins to take more shape, because it is fairly unique to each individual?
Is it a danger to society?
Yeah. Does it cause a lack of cohesion, or is a lack of cohesion even a problem necessarily?
I was going to say, like, I think it's
maybe it depends on the perspective of
danger.
Correct.
Yeah. A danger to the old guard.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A danger to being controlled. Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say that society,
I knew I
in the
liked
way
you.
that it has been, has basically been a system of control, telling people this is your role, this is how you're controlled. And you don't even know that you're being controlled because this is just the systems that you were born into. I mean, we can go way down the rabbit hole of like,
how have we never talked about this before?
The US, like, I don't know much about this, so I'm not
Sure.
going to go down this rabbit hole, but the bits that I have explored and heard other people who do know a lot about this talk about how the United States of America is a legal entity.
Yes.
Not and that we as individuals are a part of this entity,
This corporate
structure. And so we don't even realize that there are rights that we have that aren't announced to us.
Yes.
We don't realize what we're born into, and we're essentially born into a version of slavery.
Yes.
So,
which I don't think is unique in human history. I would say this is most of human history. We in the United States tend to see our country as this newer approach to governance and human sovereignty. That's a dangerous approach to take, depending on your perspective. But we believe we should be holding ourselves to a higher level in terms of human freedom, right? And that's given us this capacity or wherewithal to say, oh, but it's not perfect yet. Like, we've made leaps and bounds. How do we move further? And is that sort of the direction you're leaning there, or am I just overpositing?
this is what I think is happening right now, is the deconstruction of all of those systems that were about control.
Yeah.
And this push, as I see it, of consciousness, of making things really hard for people to stay asleep, is what is leading people to have their breakdowns, their dark nights of the soul, to get to the point where they go, okay, what the fuck is this really about?
Yeah.
To be another person who has a connection to spiritual consciousness, who they are as a spiritual being. When we do that, when we have that connection, naturally we don't want to harm other people. That's just
right.
So is it dangerous? It's dangerous to the systems. Is it dangerous to individuals? No, it's the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. And then sort of layering on top of that, let's take that soul contract construct. If it's suggestive then that if we move that forward in time, linearly through time, then the idea there is that we see fewer people whose goals or needs are to have that subjugation or have that damage done to themselves through whatever forms of oppression or violence or hatred or whatever else. And this could be one of those turning points or tipping points where we're starting to reorganize towards a different outlook, which is strongly suggestive of a mass evolution of the spirit. And that's a very sort of tip of the iceberg kind of construct. I wonder if we're reaching that point where the old systems are going to have to fall away, and how that looks, because that's seismic in terms of a shift. And I don't have enough tinfoil for a hat for this one. There are a lot of systems in place and a lot of people with deep-seated interests in retaining or maintaining, I should say, those structures.
I think that's why there is such a larger-than-life, obvious villain character in the White House right now.
Sure.
Like, it's laughable because it needed to get to this point where people are like, what the fuck does government even mean if this person is running this country? Like, is government just a farce?
Well, in this case, that would suggest that it's good.
Right.
That we are where we are.
Right. That is how I see it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't negate
it's funny,
the pains and like all
so much hand-wringing is being expended on, oh my God, this is going to destroy our system. What are we going to do? Oh, don't they know how important it is? And I'm watching folks who would ostensibly be considered progressive falling back on extremely conservative values and viewpoints. And it's interesting. And I don't judge them or disregard their concerns.
I find this really fascinating time in consciousness, because you cannot really put people in boxes. No. People are changing their minds on things so quickly.
It's beautiful.
I fucking love it, because how I perceived conservative or progressive people now is completely different. I'm like, it's really just, I don't think there really is going to be anything, like, I don't think it's possible to categorize people as progressive or conservative.
I'm seeing
in the near future.
I'm seeing right now what it's showing me is just how large the portion of the pie that could have basically been regarded as neoliberalism for a lot longer than we recognized it as a frame. It's interesting. It's interesting.
And that, like, on social issues, people can have a progressive lens around one social issue and a conservative lens around the other. And it doesn't have to,
It
I
breaks
think it's
on different
amazing. You don't
lines.
have to, yeah, you don't have to buy into a binary that we all as progressives believe this. We all as conservatives, like
But they
that.
keep trying to push it.
Yeah. And I think that that's what will break the binary is that people will go, okay, it's getting too extreme on either end.
It is.
And no one lives in those extremes.
Right.
So we're going to find our way away from, I mean, I think politics is fucking ridiculous. Like just in general,
Yeah.
I think it's fucking ridiculous. And one of the things I pause because one of the things that I find so limiting for historically repressed groups of people is the idea that we need politicians or we need a political party, like that is the path for our freedom. Drives me fucking nuts. It really angers me because it's groups of people who are already free and that we forget that we're free because it's like the problem and the solution are political. The politics creates the problem and then offers the solution.
Well, of course it does. How else are you going to stay in power?
Right.
Man. Like, yeah. And looking at, and maybe this is, I'm not an expert on this, but my perception of politics or the need for government is really to provide a stable baseline for society to begin to operate from. And because we have this global society at this point, and with governments each becoming weirdly more tribal, the more integrated they get, taking on different aspects of who they're protecting, big old air quotes, who they're protecting, who they're serving. It's not generally the people. And watching as we start to move towards a world where maybe we don't need those individual governments. And I am not for a single global government because that just becomes even more destructive. And I don't know where we find a balance. I just don't know where we find a balance.
I think it's the story that's unfolding. Nobody knows, but I think that this is where the individual healing and returning to personal sovereignty is the key. And that's why, like, all of this upheaval and upset, which is leading so many people to think about their place in the world and not be on autopilot and to start to consider, like, who am I actually? Why am I here? What role am I playing on Earth? All of these things that would have been bigger have forever been question of humanity, but in our short history, especially of this country, were never really questions because the government, we're American and this is how Americans do things. And we're just here to like have a good life, and which
there's something to that.
There is something to that. I mean, when you go full circle, you come back to that place where nothing matters. Everything matters. I'm just here having a conversation with my friends. I'm going to have dinner later. And like, it's very simple.
It is.
But to get to a place of simplicity, you have to do all of the beliefs that you've had about reality. But as people get pushed towards that, everyone starts to play their part.
Yeah.
Because we do have specific roles to play. And when we recognize that we're free, then we start playing those parts. And there is less need for a dominating government. And for sure, there's a need for some semblance of structure. But what that will look like,
right?
Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know either. And I love that we're getting to explore the space in real time in 2025. I always have this need to understand or be able to guess at what's going to come next. And I'm really trying to let that go right now because it's getting less and less reasonable.
How could you?
It used to be easy.
Yeah.
Think 100 years ago, it was probably pretty easy to guess what was going to happen in the next decade, 20 years of your life.
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward. Now we almost have this, I don't know, it's an absurdity of riches when it comes to choice and opportunity. And we get to fail, but somehow we survive it. Nothing is as existential as it was for our parents. And it's amazing and terrifying at every single moment when you let it show up. Maybe it's less terrifying for you. I'm still working through it, but it's beautiful
I feel
every
like it's,
moment.
yeah, I wouldn't say terrifying, but I think about like when we're fully present with life, that it's horrifying and beautiful in equal
Yeah.
measures.
A friend of mine recently asked, why terrifying? What does that terror look like when you experience it? And I had to sit there and really think about whether or not I meant terror or horror, as you just said,
Hmm.
and why it was so scary to conceptually recognize freedom
Hmm.
without the guardrails of the expectations of what we were born into. And I don't have a good answer for that.
Because it's structure, it's known.
We're addicted to structure. I work in structure. Like my job is to apply structure
Hmm.
to massive amounts of information.
Hmm. And that's needed.
It is, but also existing outside of that is this paradox that is fascinating to experience, and trying to interlace the two. I feel like I'm a walking avatar of left brain, right brain, here, find the balance. And it's, yeah, life is fun, man. I always default to that. Like, life is wild, life is fun. It's a nonsensical frame that actually seems to encompass my experience. I never know how it is for anybody else. So I like talking to people that think about it.
I think I'm going to be 50 in November. And
Fucking cheers. Half century, man.
yeah, it's fascinating.
It's got, you know,
It's
I would never
fascinating.
have guessed that we weren't the same age and both 10 years younger.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, and I think about like my parents are in their mid and late 80s
Yeah.
and they're still figuring things out. Like,
How cool.
and how it really, first of all, how quickly it really does go by. So when I think about like who I was at 18 years old, that doesn't seem like that long ago.
Yeah.
And if I'm like, wow, potentially have, well, like, who knows how long, obviously, but potentially 35 years, maybe.
Sure. I think you got more in the tank, but you know.
Potentially less than I've lived already.
Yes.
And seeing how little, even the things that have been devastating in my life didn't destroy me, you know? So it's like going through the dark night of the soul is however long that lasts or how many times it comes around.
It's harrowing every time, man.
And it's fortifying.
Yeah.
It really is. It's why I think it's why I feel the most content that I've ever felt in my life, is because I've gone through some of the like most soul crushing, personality reforming experiences and just have kept going.
Yeah.
And then I go, fuck, if I could do that and that and that and that, like what the fuck am I scared of? And
Yeah.
why worry? If I've made it through things that other people would go, I couldn't make it through that. Or I myself would go, I don't think I can do this, but I do.
Yeah.
And come out on the other side. That to me is where like real peace comes from. If I would have been like 18 years old and I found Buddhism and then I just have been calm for my whole life, and that was my way of navigating trauma from my childhood, which is its own path, I don't know if I would have really felt calm, like a true sense of peace.
Right.
That no matter what happens, no matter what kind of storm passes, that I'm still going to be fine, even if I die.
Yeah. Yeah. How cool is it, by the way? Because I talk to a lot of folks who are terrified of death.
I don't feel that
Terrified.
way.
I don't either. And it's, I wonder, I have a sense of how I got to that, but I also don't ever really remember fearing death.
I don't know if I did really either.
And I never thought about it.
Yeah.
And then somebody asked me about it, or I went through some things, and I was like, there was a realization that, oh yeah, no, I'm not afraid of this. Not the point I was heading toward, but it's one that came up. But to the point of peace, I was listening, and I forget the gentleman's name. He's a Vietnamese grandmaster Shaolin, runs a temple in Germany. And I just listened to an interview with him, really fascinating, insightful things. And for him, the question was, how do you find happiness? And his purpose, as stated, wasn't finding happiness. Rather, it was what you just described, finding peace. And that was more important to him after 40 odd years of training Shaolin. It's about finding peace, and there's still difficulty there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his sort of North Star goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about that for the last few weeks, and you bringing it up in similar terms, because you didn't say you're out there seeking happiness, or that happiness and joy is what you're looking for, but you're bringing peace into the conversation. Do you have a sense of how you came to that recognition? Because it's a newer idea for me, but when I think back on it, it also makes sense.
How I came to the recognition that it was something important for me?
Yeah.
Just experiencing it and realizing how much of my life wasn't in peace.
Yeah.
And even when I was like my most successful financially or career, that there was no peace there. And yeah, just having moments of it. And I think it started when I was doing breath work, and I would have these huge emotional releases, and have even memories come back that were really hard for me to process, and have traumas come up that I didn't recognize as traumas, to go through that and to feel large amounts of grief or rage, and then to minutes later be in a state of peace and to, oh my God, this is something I didn't know existed.
Yeah. And it's not just the absence of suffering. It's something.
It's inclusive of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of my friends are going to make fun of me for this. They have a counter running for how many times I've quoted this song by Mushroom Head. And it's you won't know peace till you've had suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes up a lot for me because it resonates. And I'm not saying that I've suffered tremendously in life, but enough that I'm also learning to recognize the value and the joy of those moments of peace and presence requiring being in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and balancing or redistributing, taking the fear of the future anxiety, or taking the fear of what has happened coming again as depression, and moving it towards this recognizing the beauty of each moment.
Yeah, not being scared of an emotional experience.
In fact, embracing it.
Yeah, recognizing that even, I think something that so many of us resist emotionally is to let ourselves feel shame that we carry.
Yeah.
Everybody carries shame. And I think it's what so many people build lives on, is to
Yes.
not feel shame. I'm going to have enough money so that I don't feel ashamed of not having money. I'm going to be healthy so I'm not feeling ashamed of not being healthy, or whatever the patterns are. That whole lives are built on not feeling ashamed.
And these are the shames that are inflicted upon us as children.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing from my, I guess now ex-wife, about the shame of the food that she was bringing in to school as a child, as a Vietnamese immigrant,
Mm-hmm.
like being ashamed of that in a school full of white people,
Mm-hmm.
like that affected her. It was something that would come up from time to time, and hearing that story from friends, and being ashamed of hair. Like I never understood or had any concept of the sensitivity around hair for Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? I don't know. I thought their hair was cool. I don't know shit.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently there's shame there, and it's deep, and those things shape people. Sorry. Thank you. I'm just reflecting on the insight you just gave.
But peace is the peace piece
Yeah, the peace piece
is not being afraid of anything, right? That if shame arises, if grief arises, if rage arises, that it's going to pass.
Yeah.
It's not actually something to be afraid of. And if you're not afraid of life, which most people are, like, constantly terrified that something bad is going to happen.
Yep.
If you're not afraid of life, then that's just where peace lives.
Yeah.
That whatever happens,
Yeah.
I can just be with it.
Yeah. I love that. And what an adventure it leads us to. Rio, thank you so much.
My pleasure. I
Thank
love
you
this
so much.
conversation.
It'll keep going, I'm sure, on and off over the next several decades, or however much time we have left.
That's right.
I appreciate you, Rio. Thank you for having me up the mountain again,
My pleasure.
and for sitting down. I really feel like we hit a stride here.
Yeah, it's a good conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you everybody who made it this far. I appreciate you all. And Rio, have a wonderful day.
You too.